Hey friends, welcome to episode 17 of the Way Too Indiecast, the official podcast of way2indie.com. I'm your host, Bernard Boo, a writer at Way Too Indie, coming to you from the Bay Area in California. And joining me today are a lot of goddamn people. We have a lot of guests today. In addition to my dumbass, we have three co-hosts on the podcast today, plus one very special guest, because 5 personalities is just way too much audio love to handle at once. We're going to be dividing today's show into 2 teams because it's too many cooks. Too many cooks. I'm going to just break out into song right now. But, before I do that,
don't.
Before I do that, we're going to start off today on Team 1. We have joining me right now Dustin Jansick, the editor-in-chief of Way Too Indie, coming to you from Sioux Falls, South Dakota. What's up, boss?
Oh, not much.
Yeah, just recording a podcast as usual. Sunday.
Our weekly thing.
And helping us kick off the show as well on Team 1 is a very special guest, a filmmaker named Kevin Chenault, who's coming to us from Evansville, Indiana. What's up, Kevin?
Hey, Bernard. Thanks a lot for having me, man. Appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for coming on. It's a pleasure to have you. And Kevin's new film, his latest film, is highly recommended by me. It's called Different Drum. It's available now on Amazon Instant, iTunes, Google Play, Xbox One, Xbox 360, and probably a couple other places. But there's plenty of opportunities to check out the movie, and I highly suggest that you do. It's a quirky indie comedy about an awkward road trip shared by an ex-couple. A lot of fun. We're going to be talking about that film, and Dustin and Kevin and I will be discussing our first main topic, our favorite road trip movies, which is, of course, inspired by Different Drum. So that's going to be a lot of fun. After that discussion, we're going to be saying goodbye to Dustin and Kevin, and we're going to take a break. After the break, I'll be back with Team 2, which is Ananda and Zach, both writers on the site who covered the living hell out of Tribeca, the Tribeca Film Festival this year, and we're going to be talking about their experience, what they watched, what movies we should keep our eye on, and which ones to stay away from, all that good stuff. It's going to be a lot of fun to run down everything that happened at Tribeca with those guys. I'm looking forward to that conversation. But first, we're here with Dustin and Kevin, and we're going to kick things off the way we always do with our Indie Picks of the Week, the segment in which each of your hosts gives you a suggestion of an awesome indie movie you should put on your radar. Now, I think we should start with our guest.
Yes.
Our esteemed guest, Mr. Kevin Chenault. What is your indie pick for the week?
My indie pick of the week is a film by Don Hertzfeldt called World of Tomorrow. It's a short film. It's an animated short film. And I'm a little late to the Don Hertzfeldt fan base, I think, because
Animation God.
He is, right. Yeah, exactly. And I feel like I'm a little late to his fan club, but I'm a huge fan now, a recent huge fan. And World of Tomorrow is his latest short film, and I saw it play at a local film festival that showed it a few weeks ago, and it's fantastic. So I highly recommend it.
And where do you know where we can find that online? Where it's available?
I'm not sure. I believe it is on demand. I think that he has a website that if you just Google it, I'm sure that you'll be able to find it. It's widely available.
That's awesome. I love his stuff. What's the big anthology movie he did? It's Such a Beautiful Day. Is that what it's called?
Oh, right. Yeah, It's Such a Beautiful Day. That's on Netflix. That's actually the first film that I saw of his, which I guess most people who are familiar with his work probably had seen Rejected first, but I saw It's Such a Beautiful Day first.
Yeah, that's a really, really great film. I love that one. I'll go next here, and I'll say my indie pick is a movie called Living is Easy with Eyes Closed. It's a really, really fun movie about a compassionate school teacher who is embarks on this quest. He's in Spain. He's a Spanish school teacher, and he embarks on this quest to meet his hero, John Legend. Oh my god! Oh my god!
Oh man!
John Lennon.
That's a lot better. Now I'm more interested.
Only slightly more.
Oh my God. John Lennon, who in 1960 Spain is reportedly filming a movie in Almeria down the coast. So this teacher, played by Javier Camara, is driving down the coast to meet his hero, and on the way he picks up two companions. A pretty pregnant 20-something girl, played by Natalia de Molina, and a young boy named Juano, played by Francesc Colomer. He's a runaway teenager with a Beatles haircut, which is very appropriate. And together, the three have a good time, have a good adventure to try and infiltrate the movie set where Mr. Lennon is reportedly filming his new movie. And I thought it was a really, really upbeat road trip movie with that's kind of light on the drama. It's really compassionate. Like, there are a lot of obstacles that these three have to face, but it's not a downer at all. It's a lot of fun. Of course, the movie's title comes from a lyric from a Beatles song or a John Lennon song, and it's directed by David Trueba. It's a great movie that is available to stream now on Google Play, Vudu, Amazon Instant, and I believe it's playing in very limited release, like in a few theaters across the country. I know it's playing here in San Francisco, but I highly recommend it.
Is it a first-time filmmaker?
I don't know.
Oh, okay, because none of those names sounded very familiar to me. So
yeah. I think the two kids are first timers.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Did you happen to see it in theaters, Bernard? Or did you see it online?
I saw it at a film festival last year. It was appropriate for this episode of the IndieCast since we're talking about road trip movies.
Sure, yeah. There you go.
My pick isn't necessarily a road trip film, but it is going to piggyback off the idea of the film festival circuit of last year. I believe you saw this last year, Bernard. My indie pick of the week is called Of Horses and Men. A film I recently watched and working on my review now. Yeah, it's a very interesting film. It explores sort of this offbeat relationship between man and horse. Each story follows an absurd set of circumstances and ends with tragic outcomes. For example, it'll follow this one storyline of a man who isn't happy with barbed wire fences blocking these horse riding trails. And so he cuts down the wires on these fences, and the landowner catches him doing so and begins to pursue this wire cutter. He's not very happy with him cutting down his fences. Well, on the next fence that the man attempts to take down, the wire snaps back in the face of the man cutting it and blinds him. But instead of ending that little short story there, the film proceeds to show the landowner still chasing after the guy. And as he comes over the hill, he sees the bloodied face of the man and is so frightened by what he sees that he falls over the edge of the cliff and dies. So it's just filled with this black comedy, kind of really at you situational irony and humor. Really, really fun, but also hard to watch at times too.
It's grisly too, yeah.
Yeah, it really is. There's some stuff that's hard to stomach. I mean, some scenes, but then some that are just absolutely hilarious. It's a lot of fun. It actually reminds me of a more recent film called Wild Tales. It's essentially a bunch of short stories made up into this one film. But Of Horses and Men, each storyline kind of connects with each other a little bit more. They're still episodic, right. But it's just kind of a bunch of sub-stories, subplots, and
it all takes place in one town, I believe.
Yeah, it's gorgeously shot in a remote Icelandic countryside. It was in Iceland. It was filmed in Iceland, and actually both this and Wild Tales were the country's official selections in the best foreign language category. So I know it's playing right now in limited theaters, very limited theaters as well. So if you live in a bigger city, you might be able to catch it. And I'm not sure if they've released the dates for home consumption yet. But it probably won't be long before it shows up on Netflix.
I can't wait, dude. I love that movie.
It's so interesting.
I'm never gonna forget it. It's such an unforgettable movie. There's so many images in that movie. Like there's an image of this couple having sex out in a field that is So
well,
funny.
and the two horses too going
and
at it.
The horses going at it.
Yeah.
Of course, that's in the first story, I believe.
Yep, exactly. It kind of bookends. It's kind of neat.
Oh,
The first story kind of bookends with sort of the last one. I think you're right, Bernard. The thing that I think I'll look back on this is it's so memorable. There's images that just once you see them, you won't soon forget. So.
And it's great because it feels like, for me, it was like being introduced to a new brand of humor. Like
Yeah.
I was laughing so hard but I'd never seen anything that was funny like this.
Right.
It's like that Icelandic humor, I guess.
Maybe it's going to start its own subgenre film.
Well, from what I understand, there are a lot of like movie comedies from that area of the world have that similar kind of black humor.
Sure.
So I'm gonna definitely seek more of those out.
Totally.
Really love the picks today. Those are our indie picks, and now we're gonna talk about Kevin and his film.
Put me on the spot.
Tell us about the film.
Oh, sure. Different Drum, like Bernard summed up, is a road trip film about two ex-lovers, Todd and Lydia, who travel from South Dakota to Indiana, and just kind of the awkward situations that they run into, and awkward and interesting people that they meet on the road.
I said this in our last year. I've done like 7 interviews with Kevin. For
I know.
Way Too Indie.
They seem to never end. It's constant. Just me
Like
and you
I've
hanging
said
out,
in
man.
every single interview, I've gone over this. But anyways, I'll say it again because it's great. Is the film really captures the weirder, more oddball side of the Midwest that I don't think is represented enough.
We went to Sioux Falls and Sioux City. Yeah.
Okay.
Whenever I wrote the script, I wrote that a part of it took place in South Dakota, but I had never actually been to South Dakota. We did a really small location scouting trip, and myself, the cinematographer, and one of the producers on the film was basically just a friend of mine who, decided to help us out with it. The three of us went on a location scouting trip, and we went to Des Moines, Iowa, and then we went up to Sioux Falls and Sioux City, and were not let down by the area. So I love Sioux Falls. I think that place is fantastic. So
Nice.
Are you from there originally, Dustin?
No, I'm kind of from the area though. I was born in a small town in Minnesota on the border, and then didn't move too far on the border of South Dakota. So, but I grew up here, most of my life in Sioux Falls. Yeah,
it's a beautiful area. I really loved it a lot. And it was like the people were so friendly, and I mean we, this was. It's like the epitome of an independent movie. We just would kind of put people on the spot because we would just walk into a diner and say, hey, do you mind if we film in your diner? And they're like, yeah, sure. When? Well, kind of right now. Is that okay? and people would just open up their doors. And I mean, we got free food. We got, permission to shoot in places that we didn't think would be possible. And,
sarsaparilla?
We did not find any sarsaparilla, man. None. What's the deal with that? The Big Lebowski led me to believe that Sioux City sarsaparilla was a thing, but I guess I guess not, man. Those Coen brothers.
Well, man, this is awesome because this is legit indie filmmaking, man. We've got this is the most legit indie filmmaker we're probably going to ever get on the podcast. This is awesome. 4-man crew. First time actors Isabella Devoy and Zach Zint, who both do a great job. Guerrilla filmmaking, man. This is awesome. Glad to have you.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Bernard. I appreciate that, man. Yeah, I mean, you guys are used to interviewing people like Noah Baumbach, right? So this is a big.
Well, not regularly, no.
Yeah. Yeah, we bumped the episode for you.
We got lucky for that.
Yeah. Oh, did you? Oh, hey, thanks.
No,
you were going to interview Wes Anderson, but you told him, you know what, man?
We got this other
Kevin
guy.
Chenault's coming on, so
way more
trying to
interesting.
bump you to maybe next year or something. I don't know. You might be able to,
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
We love it. We love it. Different Drum, of course. Again, we're going to plug it again. Available on Amazon, iTunes, Google, and Xbox. Everybody go check that out. And because it's such a great road trip movie, we have decided to talk about road trip movies in our first main topic of the week. I love road trip movies. I think the reason it's kind of such a prominent subgenre in movies is that it already has an inherent almost narrative shape to it. It provides so many excuses for plot developments as the characters go along and travel together and, meet different people and go to different places. I always love them. I look forward to road trip movies, even if I don't know fucking anything else about them. Because at least I know there's going to be variety, right?
Right, yeah. And it's kind of just like you're on this trip and voyage with them, too. You're kind of seeing these sites, and a lot of times they're seeing them for the first time, too.
Now, I have a question for you guys before we start talking about our favorite road trip movies. Does a road trip movie have to involve a car?
No, I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either. I've got another question for you guys. Does a road trip movie have to involve a road?
Whoa.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a thing, or would it just be a travel film?
I suppose it just depends on how strict you want to get with.
Stretch it.
Yeah.
But I think it's a really broad-reaching topic. But let's get into it. Let's talk about some of our favorites. Kevin, again, since you're our guest, let's start with you. What's one of your favorite road trip movies?
Oh, sure, man. Okay, so to go back to whether or not we need a road to be a road trip movie, but and we've already mentioned him multiple times, I think, in our discussion. But Darjeeling Limited is one of my favorite travel films, but I guess it's not really, so I don't know if that would classify as a road trip film.
No, I had that on my list too.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, that's a train. It's more of a train film, I guess, or a track.
Sure.
A track
film,
I
think it's the same concept, yeah.
Right, yeah, the same kind. There's, three brothers, estranged brothers who don't, they don't communicate very well anymore, and maybe never did, stuck in a passage car together. And that film is really interesting to me because it's one of the Wes Anderson films that I've watched that the first viewing I didn't love it.
I was the same way. I was the same way.
Yeah.
I saw in theaters. I'm like, I love the character development, but I didn't get it. Like, it didn't stick with me.
Yeah, same here. I actually, it's the only film I've ever done this with, and it might sound a little strange or something, or a little pre-planned that I'm going to tell the story, but it's the only film that I've ever watched twice in a row, like back to back.
Oh,
and
wow.
I watched it in my house because I don't think that it got a wide enough release to play here in Southern Indiana where I live. So I was watching it on DVD whenever it was released, and I watched it. I think I was maybe too distracted by the set design, by the staging and how amazing it looked, and I just didn't love the story of it very well. And then right after it ended, my girlfriend was like, well, that's enough for me. I'm going to go to sleep. And I was like, I can't. I've got to figure out why I didn't like this movie. There's got to be a reason, like, why it didn't click with me. And then I watched it again all the way through for the second time.
Wow.
And after that, it was brilliant. I got all the little nuanced jokes, all the character development between the brothers, the way that they acted towards each other, the way that, Owen Wilson orders food for the other two brothers, and, little subtle things like that I did pick up on.
The sort of recurring jokes or themes in the film.
Right.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I didn't watch it back to back. I don't know if I've ever done that, actually. I don't know if I've ever watched a movie and then rewatched it right away again. I don't know. I can't think of a time that's happened, but
I don't know, man. It sounds, maybe I shouldn't have told that story.
No, I think that's really interesting.
It sounds weird. It's like, who would watch it? It doesn't even make sense to me. But
I did it with Mulholland Drive. I watched it twice, back to back.
Oh man,
I've actually done that a few times.
And that movie's pretty long too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's my favorite movie though.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Wow. Really? Wow. Okay. I mean, I love David. I love that movie as well. That's David Lynch is fantastic. That movie really is something else.
Dustin, let's get to your road trip movie. What do you have for us?
My favorite road trip movie is probably Y Tu Mama También.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I believe the translation is "And Your Mama Too."
Yeah.
But this is Alfonso Cuarón's. It's a road trip movie, right? I mean, I'm classifying this as a road trip movie. It follows two Mexico City teenagers from sort of different classes, and they just their girlfriends go off to international. What is that? They're studying abroad, I believe. So their girlfriends leave them. And these two boys meet a woman at a wedding, and most of the film is just spent with the two convincing this Spanish woman to go on a trip to a beach, and it's really just it's amazing. I think it's beautiful what they discover in themselves. There's sort of this like sexual discovery that they do, so it's almost kind of a coming of age almost with a road trip movie in there as well. It's gorgeous, beautiful cinematography. I love this film. I know Bernard, you're a fan of the film as well too, aren't you?
Yeah, it was probably one of those films that came out when I was really getting serious about my love for film, and one of the more the first really really dense films that I dove into.
Yeah, I just remember being blown away by the ending. They kind of just discover themselves a little bit and move on, and it's I love it. I love the film.
Yeah, that's what I really love that film as well. It's been quite a few years since I've seen it. But the ending is almost a bittersweet for me. Whenever at least from whatever I remember of watching it, it's kind of sad, but also it has a nice conclusion. It's a very real life ending. It feels like
it's not movie like, it's not Hollywood like. And I love those type of things. Yeah. You're right. It's very, this is what would happen in real life.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that film, and I guess my pick for favorite road trip movie. I don't know if this is my all-time favorite road trip movie, but I guess you know what? Maybe it might be. Maybe it might be my favorite road trip movie because it's one of my favorite movies, Jean-Luc Godard's Weekend, which is just it's just something else. I mean, even today, it just really knocks me for a loop. But it follows this kind of rich bourgeois couple in France who conspires to kill each other with each of their secret lovers, and they're unsuccessful, but they travel to the wife's parents on the countryside and have this countryside road trip that kind of devolves into mayhem. They run into all these weird people, and there's crazy car crashes. With that, of course, the famous tracking shot of that one car pileup on the countryside road. There's cannibalism involved.
Oh yeah.
It's just a crazy fucking movie, man. It's so delightful. I love watching this movie. I probably watch it once a year still, and one of my favorites. I'll say it's my favorite road trip movie. Godard is, of course, I think everyone admires Godard, but this might be my favorite movie of his. I'm gonna stop making these grand statements. I'll just say. I love
It's a good movie.
It's a great movie. It's a great movie.
Right.
And that one's available in the Criterion Collection as well, right? I believe.
Yeah, man. I think it's even streaming on Hulu.
Yeah. Right.
I think we're gonna keep track of all your best movies.
Oh my God!
Making these statements, Bernard. We're gonna keep track of this, man.
I know.
Mulholland Drive's your favorite movie of all time. Weekend is your favorite or the
Godard.
Best Godard movie.
I'll scratch that. So, I will say I will stand by Mulholland Drive. Mulholland Drive, I think, will always be my favorite movie. I don't think that's ever going to go anywhere. It's been so for like over a decade, so it's never been knocked off.
We should have an episode where you explain that film to me. By the way.
Oh my God,
that would be awesome. I didn't get it.
I will happily do that.
I need to play the game too. There's a game that you can play along with it, right?
There's so much shit. There's
a drinking game?
No, well, you probably could make it one, but it's like, hey, pay attention to this scene. Watch the candle or the lamp, or I don't know.
David Lynch. Oh, okay. The movie is so impenetrable. Like you know what's going on. So the studio, I think, forced David Lynch to they wanted him to give some type of explanation. Yep. So he gave like 10 clues.
And they're like
he wouldn't explain it, but he would give 10 clues.
And the clues aren't literally like, okay, in this scene, watch how the lamp light affects something. Like they're very like ambiguous clues, right?
I can't wait to do this episode. We're doing We're doing it. We're doing it.
All right, I need to rewatch. It's an excuse for me to rewatch it. It's been so long since I've seen it. But
Definitely, but I'm, along with that being my favorite film, I'm also going to stand by Weekend being my favorite road trip movie for sure. But let's get back to you, Kevin. Give us some. Let's do rapid fire. Why don't you list off a couple? Give us short reasoning.
Oh yeah, okay, sure. Well, I've only got two. I've got two other films in my head about. They might fit within the travel film genre, maybe not necessarily road films, but the other one, it kind of is a companion piece to Darjeeling Limited, I would say, which is Life Aquatic, which is definitely not a road film at all. So the two things that I wanted to talk about are by the same director, and they don't even have roads in them. But I think that it goes into the whole idea of traveling, and there's something humanly, relatable about traveling, going somewhere with a group of people. With Life Aquatic, that film, as fantastic as it is, as over the top as it is, as big as Bill Murray is, I mean, he's larger than life in that movie. It's really, really relatable to somebody who loves film making and who wants to make films. The other road trip film, just to name it off real quick, is Badlands, the Terrence Malick film, which I just recently watched, and it blew me away. I love that film.
Those are great picks.
Yeah,
no roads, but whatever, man, it's okay. For our road trip topic, no roads, but that's all right.
Right, yeah, no road trip, but I got the trip part.
You got the trip. That's the operative word, right? That's the operative word.
Hey, man, Badlands has roads and cars.
Totally.
Okay.
Totally.
So come on, give me a break, Bernard. Jeez.
Oh man, I'll ingest. Those are great picks, great movies, all of them. Dustin, do you have any more?
Yeah, more modern films as well would be Nebraska. Sideways. Probably my favorite more modern road trip movie was probably Little Miss Sunshine. I love that film. I adore that film. And then, you know what? I have a place in my heart for an old classic comedy, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And that definitely has automobiles in the title, so that one counts as a road trip film. So.
Oh, yeah. Can't argue with that one. Try and argue with that, Bernard. I dare you.
Come on, Bernard.
No, I'm also, I've got some picks that definitely aren't traditional. I mean, like I mentioned it earlier, the Lord of the Rings series, I think is a total road trip movie. Like, that's a total, especially Frodo and Sam's storyline. I think it has all the makings of a road trip movie without the cars, but we can't hold that against them. It's Middle Earth. They don't have cars.
Yeah.
I'm sure they would have used them. I'm sure they would have used them if they could have. But just to get this one out of the way, I really don't like this movie anymore, but I remember loving it when I was younger.
Wow. Oh, no.
To get this shit out of the way.
You're hyping it up, man. I want to see this movie.
You've probably seen it. Todd Phillips' Road Trip with Tom Green and Breckin Meyer.
Oh my gosh.
I loved that movie when it came out, and then I watched it again maybe a couple years ago, and it's just a piece of that is a piece
Tom
of garbage.
Green's in it, so I mean,
come on.
Remember that Tom Green?
Oh man, I remember that.
Where is he at? There's something to be said about his style of humor, because I'm trying to think of other comedians who did that type of stuff before him, and I mean, maybe Andy Kaufman might have been an inspiration, maybe, but his way of annoying people and making that comedy
he's such a great pest.
Yeah. Right, that's what it is. He's the pest. It's like, move over, John Leguizamo. He's the pest. That's him.
He's the pest.
And Jackass probably came out of that, and Johnny Knoxville.
Definitely.
I love that, Bernard. I was asked recently at a bar. I was talking to one of the co-directors and co-creators of the Blair Witch Project. Their newest film, Exist, which is actually really well-made horror film about Bigfoot. Anyways, that's totally off topic. But I was talking to him at a bar, and someone overheard me talking to him And he said, "What is your film like, or what is it about?" And I said, "Well, it's these people who they get in a car and they drive from South Dakota to Indiana." That usual stick that I say. And then a lady at the bar yells, and she said, "Oh, like the movie Road Trip?" And and I was caught off guard, and I said. I looked at her and I said, "Exactly like the movie Road Trip." So that's probably one of the 1-star reviews that we have on Amazon is probably that lady. She went and watched it and was totally upset with
She
me.
thought she was getting
like
a road trip type film.
Yeah.
Tom Green humping a dead moose type of film.
Right, yeah. She said, "Where's all the humping in this movie? This is terrible." Independent movie.
I can't believe how long we just talked about Road Trip, but I was not expecting that, but it was great. But I have some other picks of movies that I think are much better.
Yeah, get us back on track, man. Get us back on track.
We've got Alexander Payne's Nebraska, starring Bruce Dern and Will Forte, which is really good from last year, and then also Ruben Fleischer's Zombieland with Jesse Eisenberg is one of my favorites in recent memory, favorite zombie movies, because it's just so much fun in contrast with other zombie movies. And also a really indie one, a recent one that I covered is Along the Roadside by Zoran Lisenak, another indie filmmaker who is very talented. It was his first film, and that one's really cool too. Seek that one out as well. There's an interview on the site with him where you can learn about that film and check it out and see if you like it. But yeah, I think that's pretty much all I've got. I think, does 28 Days Later count? Kind of has a road trip, right?
Yeah, there is a road trip. I mean, because they travel from, they go from London to like the outskirts, like small town England. That's true. That is kind of a
great
road
tunnel
trip,
scene too, where they're driving through the tunnel.
Oh my God, that's just a great movie in general, isn't it? I mean, that the way that they were able to clear the streets of some of the busiest streets in London and shoot it on digital cameras, and it just added to the aesthetic of it. I don't know.
I can't believe they shot that practically. I can't believe it. Like, that's amazing.
Right. Yeah, they cleared those streets, and I mean, they shot it with, I think that they shot it on like the Canon XL1s or XL2s or something. They were like standard definition digital camcorders. I think. I don't know. That might not be exactly.
Oh no, you're right. You know why? Because I bought that movie on goddamn Blu-ray.
Oh, it doesn't
looks
look
like
any better,
shit.
Does it?
It looks like shit. I was so pissed off. Like, I got home. This was on Blu-ray. It was kind of new. I popped in my 28 Days Later, like one of my most beloved movies. Popped it in. Like, I couldn't see anything.
It's just it made all the video grain
more
HD.
noticeable.
That's what it did. Just popped it out, man. You got to get that movie. I don't know if they released it on VHS, but if we got it on VHS, I bet it would look
ideal.
awesome.
It's original format.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. I like road trip movies. I know there's plenty we missed. If you guys think that we missed any big ones, which we probably did, let us know in the comments on iTunes or wherever. We're so happy that you could join us today, Kevin. It was great.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you guys having me on and talking about mainly the movie Road Trip, starring Tom Green. Go out and pick that up as soon as possible.
Is that streaming on Netflix?
Oh gosh, I hope it is.
I hope so too. This is gonna boost some sales for Tom Green, I think. He owes us big, man.
So now we'll see you guys on the other side of it. Thanks to Dustin. Thanks to Kevin. We'll be back. You're listening to the Way Too Indiecast, the official podcast of WayTooIndie.com, where you'll find film news, reviews, and interviews with an emphasis on indie. Follow us on Twitter at Way2Indie and like us on Facebook. Hey guys, we're back on the Way Too Indiecast. Thank you for joining us again. And now that Team 1 has left us, we've got Team 2 stepping up to the plate for this episode of the podcast. Ananda and Zach, who each covered the living shit out of Tribeca this year. What's up, guys?
Tag team, back again.
Working ourselves to the bone.
Yes.
That is not the correct second lyric of that song, but okay.
Yeah.
I was hoping.
Our tag team needs some work.
Isn't it Check It, Correct It, Let's Begin?
Oh, I don't know.
But anyways, yeah. That's a fun way to start things off. But we're going to be talking about in the second segment, of course, the Tribeca Film Festival, which these two lovely people just got done covering. So I'm going to give the reins over to you guys and let you lead me and the audience through Tribeca 2015, the highs, the lows, what we should keep our eye on, what we should stay away from. Take it away.
Yeah, so there were a lot of really interesting movies this Tribeca slate. This is my personal third time covering the festival, and I think generally speaking, the movies that I got access to were better than the previous 2 years. I ended up seeing 27 movies, which was kind of crazy over that short span. Ananda, how many do you think you ended up getting around to?
I think I saw a total of 17. Wow, you saw like 10 more than me.
I had the luxury of more pre-screenings than
That's
you.
true.
So I'll give you that. 17 is a lot.
Yeah, not too bad. I only saw one movie before the actual festival and then saw all the rest there.
But that one movie you saw before the festival turns out to be, I think, both
amazing.
of our
Yeah.
one of the favorites between both of us. The recent winner for the Audience Award for Best Documentary, Trans Fatty Lives, which we have been mispronouncing for most of this week.
I know. Well, at least I don't think we ever did it on the air, thank goodness. But
yeah,
a stirring nutrition documentary.
Amongst ourselves, we were talking about trans fatty lives. Yes, exactly. About how people are eating too much trans fat. No. But this makes so much more sense, especially if you understand the director of the film / star / everything.
/ DJ Trans Fatty.
Trans Fatty, exactly. So that makes a lot more sense. But we should talk about this movie to start because it was so great. And I was kind of excited that I kickstarted off Tribeca with such a great film and that it's gone on to get so much recognition. And one of the few moments I genuinely geeked out during Tribeca was when I saw Patrick O'Brien, the director of this film, in his wheelchair with his pink mohawk going to his screening. And I just did a little like celebrity crazed moment. I was like, ah! And it's not because I know, and it's not even because he's famous. He's not, but it's because, well, I mean, I guess he is sort of internet famous slightly, but it was because that movie moved me so much that I was genuinely like really touched to see him out in the world. Like this is pretty big deal for him if you watch this movie and see what he's been through. And I just think it's a phenomenal film. But yeah, Zach, why don't you talk about what this movie is even about?
Yeah, so for those who don't know, Trans Fatty Lives is basically Patrick O'Brien's story. He has been a filmmaker for many, many years, and around the age of 30, he was diagnosed with ALS, the motor neuron disease that, of course, famously is the one that afflicts Stephen Hawking. But because he is constantly making art and films and documentaries and these weird experimental projects, he has sort of turned his life into this ongoing art project. He's kind of turned the cameras on himself as he's gone through this process of going from being completely able-bodied to, as Ananda mentioned, he's in a wheelchair now and uses a text-to-speech device, much like Stephen Hawking does. But it's a really, really incredible movie. It's not a dry documentary at all. He's such a brash, like loud, expressive artist that it ends up being this really engaging piece, this very impressionistic piece. There aren't really many talking head moments, and any interview section is kind of done largely through voiceover, and it's unexplained a lot of the time who's speaking. You just sort of get an impression of his gradual decline in health and the perseverance of spirit that he has to push through it and still be funny and open and really he uses his disease as a platform to talk about what he's going through and what many people go through, and it becomes a really emotional, moving film. Definitely one of the most special documentaries at Tribeca this year.
Yeah, I agreed. I was really moved by it, which is interesting because when I started watching the film, I was kind of disgusted by it. It's got this very gritty, like off-putting. I keep describing it as like early 90s MTV, where everything was just like rapid edits, and like shocks, imagery, like, buildings being blown up and crazy things. And he's, kind of an out there artist. So some of the like physical things that he's done as an artist are very weird to look at, and some of the films he's made are very strange. And he intersperses that throughout to give a sense of himself. And at first, it's a little like, I don't know if I get your art, dude. By the end, it's not. I mean, not only do you kind of get his art, but you get his essence. I don't know. It's a fantastic film. And screw the ice bucket challenge. This is the movie everyone needs to watch. So
Eddie
I loved
Redmayne
it.
ain't got nothing on Patrick.
Yeah, he did great, but no, this is the real deal, and it's fantastic.
Sticking with documentaries that at least I really loved, there's a couple that I thought got unbelievable access. One is one that premiered at Sundance, and it's playing at Hot Docs as well. I know CJ will have some coverage up on Way Too Indie shortly, but it's the movie Terror, which is about a documentary crew that gets access to this FBI informant who is uncovering different forms of domestic terrorism. And he's sent into this Muslim community in Pittsburgh to try and investigate this potential threat without wanting to reveal too much of what happens. Just the way that the documentarians are able to show not just this informant's conversations with his bosses, but his conversations with this potential subject, and then the access to people that they ultimately talk to. It's just a remarkable movie that shows you a side of domestic security that we don't normally see. Doesn't necessarily need to portray it in a positive or negative light, just sort of shows it for what it is and becomes pretty terrifying by the end. But I thought that Terror was one of the most gripping documentaries in the festival. Definitely one that I would strongly recommend, as well as Among the Believers, which is a documentary that gets access to the Red Mosque in Pakistan, where Maulana Aziz preaches a lot of anti-Western rhetoric. And it's this pretty nuanced look at the situation in Pakistan with different sides of Islam conflicting over how to approach on how to best fulfill the Quran and their varying acceptance of the use of jihad, and just this internal struggle between these extremists and these more moderate Muslims who are fighting over control of not just their country, but how other countries want to impact Pakistan. It becomes this really, really complicated look at a lot of different aspects to how terror affects people in Pakistan on every side of the issue. So they were both really, really incredible documentaries, Terror and Among the Believers, along with Trans Fatty Lives. Those are probably my three favorite documentaries from... Oh, there we go. We did it again. We did it again.
It's really hard once you get it into your head that it's supposed to be lives, and yeah, no, it's lives. Lives.
Take two. Trans Fatty Lives, among my favorite documentaries from a really good slate of documentaries at this year's Tribeca.
Yeah, I kind of left the documentaries to you because I knew you were going to be able to see a lot more of them than I was. So really, the only other documentary I saw at the festival was The Wolfpack.
Yeah.
Which I don't really have to extol too much further since it's gotten plenty of buzz on its own out of Sundance, but it was really, really good. And I'd say that the only caveat I have about the film is that I don't think it's necessarily super great because the director did anything especially groundbreaking with it. Not to
a lot of
demean
missed opportunities in that.
Yeah. I was gonna say, as far as documentary filmmaking going, she's not as innovative as I've seen. It's more that she just found this amazing story, and look, I mean, I guess she had the foresight and the thought to let that story kind of play out on its own and allow these people to tell their own story, which is about 6 boys who have grown up with a father who was part of the Hare Krishnas and kind of kept them locked up in their Lower East Side apartment their entire lives, and they've gotten very little access to the outside world, and most of what they know and understand is from the movies that they've seen and been able to recreate, and they're incredibly artistic, and they've sort of created this own world for themselves, but then the film showcases how they've started to explore the outside world and started to stand up to their father, and it's really moving, granted, and interesting. Mostly it's just super interesting that she kind of, I don't even know how she came across this family, but I wouldn't say she's breaking any documentary molds.
I think there are a lot of unanswered questions about child rearing in that movie that we don't get explored adequately enough, that I think is on everyone's mind while you're watching. Like, like what the hell? Like, how did this happen?
I think she could have maybe asked more questions rather than let them talk so much. And what they do give us is good stuff, but yeah, she could have directed them a little bit more to reveal some of that. Yeah, I agree that you're kind of left wondering, like, how did this happen? Like, how did these things
and like the thinking
escalate?
Of what, I think the parents are just as fascinating as the kids, and maybe we could have got more of that, but I really like the movie though. It's a good movie. I'm interviewing Miss Moselle this coming week about the movie. I'm really excited for that conversation. And you guys ran into some of the sons or some of the kids at the festival.
I did. Yeah, I saw them the night of their premiere, and they were just three of the younger ones were hanging out in the lobby. And I couldn't help myself because partially I was kind of similarly with Patrick O'Brien. I think I was just so like enamored that they were like actually out in the world because this is, I just saw their film and I know how hard it was for them to even get to the point where they're stepping outside their front door, and here they are at Tribeca Film Festival about to watch their film. And so I had to go and tell them like how much I appreciated that they shared their story. And they were, of course, like incredibly sweet and like lovely people, and gave all the credit to the director, and were just kept saying, oh, it's the director, she's great. And I was like, I agree totally, but way to go, guys.
I was hoping as I was watching the movie, not really, I was jokingly hoping that there would be a shot of them outside howling at the I'm such a dick, but I was thinking about that.
I think someone did ask me when I was talking about the wolf pack, like, wait, where are the wolves in this story? Like, you're missing the point here. No.
But Zach, you did had some interaction as well, right?
Yeah, I was on the red carpet for the wolf pack, and I ended up talking to one of the twins. Don't know exactly which one. Right. A lot of people on the red carpet were asking, which twin are you? But they were very kind about that, and I think they understand that it's kind of easy to lump them all in together. But they were doling out a lot of advice on the film industry. He was telling me specifically that film is all about who you know, so networking is very important. So now I have that bit of advice to work with.
Which is just so funny that they're talking about networking and like being social when they've lived their whole lives in the bedroom. Like that's really
apparently. Moselle is starting a production company with them, so stay tuned for some Angulo movies. Apparently,
that's cool.
I'm in.
I've been proud of those kids.
Were you guys surprised by how good the acting is in their films?
When I forget which of them did it, but one of them was playing the Joker.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I've never seen such a great impression of Heath Ledger's Joker. Like, that was impressive.
It was great.
Yeah.
If you're that immersed in movies, you become familiar with what it takes, I guess. Yeah. Their movies were pretty fun to watch.
Yeah, I got a little teary-eyed when they were talking about what Batman has meant to them, actually, and it was like, right. This is right here. This is the transformative power of film, and like the way it touches us. And I don't normally say that about Batman, but like I get it. I totally get it. Like, he is a very empowering figure and motivational, I guess, if you need someone to like kick you in the pants and like convince you to just fight life.
Yeah, I know we were talking about this a little bit before about different themes that are running through the festival and how strongly or not so strongly they are, but for me, at least when it came to the narratives, I think a lot of the movies that I really enjoyed sort of dealt with sexual insecurity in comedic ways, whether that is Sleeping with Other People, whether that is Tenured to an extent, Dirty Weekend, or The Overnight. I think a lot of the comedies sort of mined that for a lot of laughs. For me, my favorite was Sleeping with Other People. It's written and directed by Leslie Headland, I think her last name is. She is the woman who wrote Bachelorette a couple years ago, based on the play she also wrote, and it's kind of been a hyped filmmaker for a little while. This is a romantic comedy about two college friends who lost their virginity to each other and then went separate ways in life, only to reconnect at a Sex Addict Anonymous meeting where they ultimately decide to develop a
platonic.
Yeah, there we go. Platonic was the word I'm looking for.
relationship.
A platonic relationship where they talk about their struggles in the dating world while balancing their unique sexual desires, I guess,
Yeah.
to each other. And it becomes a just very charming friendship movie that develops into something more. The relationship between Jason Sudeikis and Alison Brie here is a lot of fun to watch. They're just really affable performers, and I just could listen to them banter back and forth for the length of this movie and be thoroughly entertained by it. So for me, it was the most enjoyable movie I saw in all of Tribeca.
I 1000% agree with you. I saw this movie as the fourth film in a 4-movie day, and was so happy to have ended my day this way. I mean, you watch 4 movies in a row and it can be pretty exhausting. And this movie is it's by far the most intelligent and funny rom-com I've seen in like a billion years. I can't extol it enough. Like I loved the banter. Like you said, it's incredibly witty. And it's not witty in a like Gilmore Girls, like they're talking in a way that you just would never believe people talk that way. Like they were believably witty. Like these are just two intelligent people who are also very funny and like play off of each other exactly right. Some of it was kind of sarcastic, which I think is a much more realistic humor to real, like,
Totally.
you know, in real life. And it wasn't like obscure references, which you get a lot in rom-coms that they're trying to like play off of. It was just like funny, situational. And the chemistry between Alison Brie and Jason Sudeikis is really good. Like they're believable as best friends, and then they're believable as like more than that. And even though like sex is the basis of a lot of rom-coms, and like it's a gold mine of jokes, I get it. I felt like they were handling it pretty maturely, even though what they're talking about is like being, like having sex with lots of people, abusing it even. They were like really self-aware of that they were using sex for a certain thing, and that they were trying to help each other with that, but not unrealistically.
Yeah, it was hyper aware of all the implications with sex and all the, they both had different desires they needed to be fulfilled, and it was talking about them in like a frank and honest way rather than just kind of a shocking way. It's not, oh my God, he said that thing, oh my God, he made that penis joke. It's just it's an honest conversation between people you believe as friends who would have this conversation.
No, it's like Headland, I think she finally like touched on something that not a lot of people have done yet, which is usually you see comedy around like error and mishap and misunderstanding. And she found the comedy in direct communication. Like these are two characters who are very open and actually take the time to stop and assess what's going on in their lives and like say, hey, we need to have a conversation about this, like, which is just healthy and awesome to see people actually communicating, in relationships, friendships, all of it. But then to see like also communication can be very funny too. Like take that communication another step further. And one of the most hilarious scenes of this film is when Jason Sudeikis' character is explaining to Alison Brie's character how to masturbate. Like he's teaching her, and it's like a 10-minute long scene, and it goes into such detail, and it's like healthy and open, but also like hilarious because this is what they're talking about, and this is how communicative these two friends are. That I love that she tapped into that it doesn't have to be all misunderstandings and uncommunication, and people don't get each other, so they don't realize what they've got. Like these are two people who realize what they've got, and they communicate about it a lot.
Like I said earlier, the most enjoyable movie I saw throughout the festival.
Absolutely.
A couple other comedies that I liked quite a bit. Man Up, another rom-com that just sort of does a bit of an effortless friendship, good banter between its two leads, Simon Pegg and Lake Bell. Just it's entertaining to watch, and like Sleeping with Other People, even when it's sort of predictable where you're going with this movie ultimately, you kind of just buy into the relationship between these people and the silliness that fills the story. Not as good as Sleeping with Other People, but totally enjoyable. I liked it a lot. Tenured is a pretty funny movie. It's a very small comedy. It's another bad teacher movie, but there's, again, a frankness to the humor here that I really liked. Gil Zabarski, I believe his name is pronounced, stars as Ethan Collins, a very depressed, foul-mouthed elementary school teacher whose wife cheated on him and left him, so now he's working through his issues with his class of fifth graders. There's a shot in the movie where he seems to be talking to his therapist, and you pull out and there's the whole classroom full of kids. There's a lot of beats that are going to feel familiar, like they're in other bad teacher comedies, but I think they find enough funny set pieces, and they have these really beautifully deadpan performances that I found hysterical. And then I know we both liked The Overnight a lot.
Yeah, great cast. Obviously, Adam Scott and Taylor Schilling, and then Jason Schwartzman, who we just come to expect so much from these days.
Yeah.
And I always forget who plays his wife in that movie. I'm always
Judith
blanking on her name.
Godrich, something like that.
That was a very interesting situational comedy about two couples on a like double date sort of at their house, right? And things get real weird.
Yeah, just the night gets increasingly intimate as it goes on. And it becomes very funny, but again, like we were talking about with Sleeping Other People, a lot of the comedy here is from the dealing with a problem together in the communicating through their issues.
Right.
As the night goes along. Yeah, again, just another like frank sexual insecurity comedy that worked really well for me.
I love awkward sex, guys. That's like the only kind there is.
Well, that movie literally starts with a scene of awkward sex. That's how the movie begins, so you'll love it.
Oh, that's right in my wheelhouse.
Awesome. Well, also kind of going with the theme of sex, one of my favorite movies out of the festival was Grandma, Paul Weitz's latest film starring Lily Tomlin, which, I mean, obviously, if you've heard anything about this film, you know that this is Lily Tomlin like vehicle. This is purely led by her, though Paul Weitz has obviously written a really, really sharp and intelligent film. But like I said in my review, I kind of feel like no one else could have played this role, or at least not to as great effect. And no one could have played this, or Lily Tomlin couldn't even have played this role until right now in her career. Like, she is just at the perfect spot to be doing this. And it's this really great movie about a grandmother, a lesbian grandmother who's also a feminist leader, poet, who has recently lost the love of her life after 30 years of marriage and or partnership, I guess I should say. And her granddaughter, 18-year-old granddaughter, played by Julia Garner, who is weirdly goddess-like, comes to her and needs an abortion and needs to raise the funds for it by 5:30 that day. So it kind of turns into a like mini road trip movie in that they travel around town, meeting up with all of Elle's friends from the past and from the present, trying to collect on old debts and favors and things like that. And it's lighthearted. She's you know, an ordinary grandma type, and that she like, but also ordinary feminist grandma type, and that the things she goes off on are overpriced coffee at a coffee shop that once used to be an abortion clinic. And she goes on this tirade against the guy who's like, could you maybe leave? You're disturbing the customers. And she just starts pouring coffee all over this place and like going on and on about how coffee is so overpriced and abortions are overpriced these days too, and like all of this stuff. But the best moment of this film comes in the middle, where she meets up with Sam Elliott's character, who is a person from her past. And this is one of the most brilliantly written scenes I've ever experienced, where it sort of slowly unfolds as to how they even know each other and who they are to each other, and then builds into this real emotional climax, the consequences of like their past and their like things that they both agreed to and didn't agree to in the past, and what they used to be to each other, the consequences of actions, how they play out later in life, which is very relevant considering this is kind of a film about abortion. Whereas Obvious Child, you know, made it very funny and like light and was trying to say like, look, abortion doesn't have to be so serious. Right. This movie is saying it can be light, it can be serious, but it just is something you should think about.
Yeah, I'm sad I missed that one. I definitely want to catch up with it.
But we have one movie that you and I both really loved and we got to watch together. Float, which do we categorize this as comedy? I think we didn't think it was, and when we watched it, we were like, wait, this is kind of comedic. What's happening?
Yeah, I don't even know really how to categorize it, because it's skirts a lot of different lines, and by the end it's, you know, a shoot 'em up, but you know, before that it's a lot more contemplative. It's this Western with Cody Smith-McPhee as a 16-year-old Scotsman who's traveling to Colorado to reunite with his love that's disappeared under mysterious circumstances. But he comes across Michael Fassbender, who's this roaming cowboy type who offers to chaperone him, but there are other things at play that sort of get revealed, and it mostly just sits with these two men who are very different in personality on their journey as they kind of like learn a bit about each other, become a little bit more like each other and more open to each other's way of life. Cody Smith-McPhee gets a lot of harsh lessons in just the rough life in the Old West, getting taken advantage of by the people around him, where Michael Fassbender is like one of the only decent men he encounters. But there's a lot, like you said, there's a lot of really funny moments. It plays out like a Coen Brothers movie in parts. I found it to be really entertaining and kind of moving by the end. There's a lot of really clever moments, and it builds into something kind of beautiful.
It does. And it's super self-aware, which is why it ends up being so funny.
Yeah.
And it's so subtle though too. Like the moments where you're like, wait, did that just happen? Oh my gosh, that just happened. Like that's ridiculous. I kind of was trying to put my finger on the style of John McClane and like who he reminded me of, and I ended up deducing that I think he reminds me of Wes Anderson. And I was curious if anyone else agrees with me about this. Just I get Coen Brothers too. Coen Brothers got that dark side, and I get the sort of darker humor aspects as well. But what do you think? Am I wrong here?
I totally see that. No, I mean, you think about that moment early in the movie when they come across those French musicians and they have that little exchange. Cody Smith-McPhee, without explanation, just talks to them in French about love and death. But those little just vignettes almost, I think, are very Wes Anderson-esque. And like you mentioned, it's shot very beautifully. You know, those bright blue skies set against, you know, the characters in the foreground. And this, of course, Ben Mendelsohn's amazing coat.
That's very Anderson.
I totally get that Anderson vibe, from the costuming to the production design to just the irreverence of some moments.
Did you notice? I feel like what a lot of people were talking about out of that film was actually Karen Pistorius, who is not even in the movie a whole lot, but she plays Rose, the love interest of Jay, Cody Smith-McPhee's character, who he's traveling to. And she's really only seen in like a few flashbacks where it starts to kind of get revealed that maybe Jay's love for her is a little misplaced. But then she just owns like the last huge shoot 'em up scene at the end so much that I think I felt like there was a lot of buzz around her, which is interesting because she definitely doesn't star in this movie. But
I mean, she stars in maybe the best scene from this movie, and it might be the only scene she stars in, and but it clearly had an impact on a lot of people. I mean, I didn't come away from the movie really taking much from her performance, other than she was, you know, involved heavily in that amazing scene. But I think everybody kind of gives a really cool performance, and not necessarily a side that we've seen to all these people. I mean, Michael Fassbender is kind of a lot funnier than we normally see him. I think there were a lot of great performances from Slow West.
Okay, so considering how much we loved, which is obviously a lot, we had a few that we were definitely not into. And I'd have to say, for me, the number one film that I saw that I just was not feeling, and I'm clearly not, there's some dissent about this decision that I've made, but Bridgend, which I was not super into, but it actually won. Hannah Murray, who stars in the film, got Best Actress for a Narrative Feature. They got Best Cinematography and Best Editing. So clearly people at Tribeca did enjoy this film. However, I really didn't. And mostly because it's quite an assault. This is a film that's based on an actual true story of where people start committing suicide on top, like one after the other. Like it's an epidemic of suicide basically among teenagers in the Welsh countryside. This is based on that actual reality, but this is the fictional story of a police detective and his daughter who moved back to town technically. He's there to investigate this, and she's there to just sort of immerse herself into the high school scene. What I don't understand is why her father doesn't expect that his teenage daughter might get wrapped up in this situation. Like, it's never really questioned that, like, he should maybe be concerned about that. And I'm always a little touchy around real life subjects, especially ones that haven't really been resolved. This is ongoing. This has been going on since 2007, and there's been, almost 80 deaths related to suicide in this community. It gets a little fantastical. The music, right? Do you remember the sound in this film, Zach? It just really like cuts into you, and it's very pulsing and crazy at times. If they're trying to capture the chaos of suicide in the like upsetting way that it leaves everyone in its wake, okay, great. great. And I'll say cinematography is probably the most deserved of the awards that it won. I'm totally in agreement there. But otherwise, I just found this movie so off-putting. I do not think that Hannah Murray especially deserving, even though she's incredibly emotionally like over the top in this film. Like, honestly, I don't find that her wide-eyed, mouth gaping stare is necessarily good acting, but I do believe she's capable of great things. I just don't think that this movie actually portrayed them. But it's a disturbing film, and I think that's what made me the most off-put by it. But what were some of your least faves, Zach?
Yeah, Bridge End definitely comes close. It falls into that category of not good or pleasant enough to recommend to anybody ever.
Yeah.
I'd say the same about a couple of movies like Franny, which we both saw, Jackrabbit, which I posted a capsule review of, and Stranded in Canton as well.
There's got to be a new subgenre that we should create called like Bummersville movies.
Yeah.
Like, and there was a lot of those at Tribeca, I think, that we ended up catching. Bridge End, of course, among them. Meadowland was a major bummer, even though it's very well performed. But like, oh gosh, like what a one to leave you, really down. But Franny, geez, you know what I think the biggest like problem with Franny was? The music. Did you notice how the music just completely did not fit the film at all? Man, and Richard Gere is like a caricature in that movie, and he looks like stinking Santa Claus half the time. It's weird.
This movie is just so funny to me for some reason. I haven't seen it. All I've heard, I asked Zach before we started recording about, we were talking about Richard Gere, and he said, oh, there was another Richard Gere movie playing at Tribeca. We had been talking about Time Out of Mind, which played at New York Film Festival, but he said there's another one playing here and it's called Franny, and I just started laughing. This is already funny to me.
Yeah,
the idea of Richard Gere being named Franny and being called Franny throughout this film.
What was Dakota Fanning's name again? Pebbles?
Poodles.
Poodles.
Yes.
I mean, I was
Franny. Oh god.
I was telling Bernard about this, but like it's such a petty reason to hate a movie. But if I can't buy your two main characters' go-to nicknames and they're said throughout the movie, like it's gonna take me out of the whole thing.
Yeah, that's the least of its problems, but yeah.
Yeah. I'll throw out there that maybe not the worst movie I saw at Tribeca, but by far the most annoying experience that I had was watching Maggie. It's the new Arnold Schwarzenegger zombie drama, I want to call it. Essentially, he plays the father to Abigail Breslin, who has contracted the zombie disease, so he brings her home to die/turn into a zombie, and not much else happens. They're sitting around waiting for this awful diagnosis, and it's supposed to kind of run analogous to being diagnosed with a fatal disease, but there's just no insight in the movie. It plays out like a parody of a Terrence Malick zombie film. Every single line is exposition. There are more tears than emotions. Arnold Schwarzenegger pretends he's a human the whole time. There's no honest moment in the movie. I really, really did not like Maggie.
Yeah. Even though there was a decent amount of buzz around that one, mostly because I think of the premise, and I was curious about it, I did have a feeling it wasn't going to live up. So I'm glad to know I avoided that bullet.
Thus far, I'm in the minority. It's doing kind of well on Rotten Tomatoes, and it worries me.
What? Well,
I gotta say, man, just knowing that it's Arnold and combined with that premise, I was super intrigued.
Yeah, I was intrigued too. It just kind of did nothing for me. It kind of went nowhere.
But you guys did love a ton of stuff at Tribeca. I'm super excited. I didn't get to go. I got to see a couple of movies that overlapped with the San Francisco International Film Festival, which just started for me. But I'm super excited for a lot of the movies you guys mentioned. Especially Grandma.
Yeah.
Grandma.
Since I keep going on and on about it.
It's so, yeah, that sounds awesome. I'm really excited for all those movies, and thank you guys for sharing your experience with us.
We did some pretty great coverage, so.
You sure did. There's tons of Tribeca coverage on the site that you guys can check out, and there's also some SF International stuff coming out, and also Hot Talks coverage. There's a lot of stuff coming out of those two festivals, and you can find this podcast on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. Please subscribe on there. You can find us on Facebook. Give Way Too Indie a like. We'd appreciate that. Follow us on Twitter at Way Too Indie, and check out our YouTube channel. Great talking to you guys. Also, our first segment, thank you to Kevin Chenault, who came on and shared his favorite road trip movies and talked about his new movie, Different Drum. Again, Different Drum is available now. Stream on Google Play, Amazon Prime, Vudu, Xbox, lots of places. I highly recommend it. And of course, Dustin joined us at the beginning of the show, the guy who makes the site run and makes it all good and look all nice.
Magic happens.
Yeah, that's where all the magic happens. Thank you for joining us, guys. And before we leave, Ananda, where can we find you on Twitter?
You can find me at Ananda Writes.
And Sir Zach?
You can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/multiplex show or on Twitter at Zshevich. That's ZSHE. V as in Van Halen 2015 North American Tour, ICH.
Hell yeah.
Rock on.
I did not expect to hear about Van Halen on this episode, but
Neither did I.
It just came out. You can find me at BJ_Boo on Twitter. We love you guys. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.